everyone to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, founder and CEO of Guide to HR. And today I have Eric Holtzclaw with us. We're going to be talking about some lessons learned as a founder himself, as well as some marketing tips and trends. So Eric, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I kiddingly tell people I'm a recovering technologist. So I started my early career on the technology side, running development shops and kind of working for some crazy CEOs during a period of time that being an entrepreneur or being in a startup wasn't what everybody was trying to do. It was kind of a new thing. Um, Worked for some sales organizations outside of Silicon Valley, establishing professional services groups for them. Owned a research company for 10 years, and I sold my interest in that in 2012 and swore that I'd never start another company. So I went back to kind of my first love of operations. I was right hand to some people who were starting businesses or trying to scale them, and I would assist with that. And in that process, they would give me their marketing department and say, "Hey, so could you run marketing too?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so I'd get their operations running, and they kind of look at me like, "Well, why are you still here?" And I'm like, "Well, remember that hot mess I walked into? That's fixed now, but I'm still doing your marketing." So I would keep their marketing department. I ended up with 6 companies. And I was doing marketing for all 6 of them. I have a long-term person who's worked with me, and she yelled at me one night and was like, "You don't have, this is not a consultancy anymore. You got like 6 jobs. You need to like turn this into a proper company." So I foolishly listened to her and I merged my business with another one, which is how we formed Liger, because Liger was mostly a strategy firm and I was using an execution firm. So I brought them together and renamed it to Liger after the movie Napoleon Dynamite. So if you've seen the movie, it is named after that. And here we are today. So I did recently merge the business underneath a larger holding company called Tarkenton, and we are the marketing organization underneath that umbrella. So yeah.
That's awesome. So tell me, as a founder, entrepreneur, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned, or if you could go back in time and tell your younger self, don't do this or do that, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean so there's the younger I went to work originally at IBM thinking I wanted to be in a big company, and then I happily ended up in a startup that had been started by a bunch of ex-IBMers and really fell in love with that. Um, and it was during a time that being an entrepreneur or being in that kind of space was not as cool as it is today. So I guess my message isn't necessarily to me because I feel lucky to have found where I am. I really do love business and I have it interwoven into, I don't have a lot of hobbies. Like I don't play golf. I barely understand football, like all those kind of things. Business has always kind of been my hobby. But there's this glamorization of entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and that is a thing that I would warn anyone who's considering doing it because it is a hard thing to do. You know, you're working 120 hours a week to not work 40 hours for someone else. And the first 3 years are terrible. And you're working for the worst boss ever yourself. Right. So
Yep.
there are a lot of those things that since I got into it, have been glamorized. And so I have this
Yeah.
conversation with people. It's kind of almost like people who wanted to join the circus or become part of a rock band. Being an entrepreneur is not what you see on television. It really isn't. And you have to be ready for it. And and if you ask if I would have done it again, I don't. So funnily, in our company, we have this thing called retros where we go back and look at a project and decide what we would have done differently.
Yeah.
I literally wouldn't have done anything any differently than I did it based on the information I had in front of me at that point. So I don't live in that world. So I know it's right for me, but it feels right for other people. And I don't know that that is true.
Yeah. So taking some time to really learn from others, hear what it's really like, pull back that curtain before you make that leap to see if
Yeah.
it is right for you, not making the assumption. It's kind of like social media. Everyone has such a fantastic, perfect life, but the reality is none of us have that, right?
Yeah. And I mean, if you think like I was lucky and didn't know it that I worked for a couple serial entrepreneurs. So first before doing my own thing. And I see a lot of people who are like, I'm in school and I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I don't know how that's possible. Like, I don't know how you do that. You need to get out there and you may not want to go get work experience in the real world, but finding someone else who's building something and partnering with them and seeing the risks they take and understanding. what you would never do that they did or whatever is a great learning. I feel very fortunate to have kind of been in the shadows of some
Yeah.
people who were doing this kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I know personally for me, I learn from others. What I watch what people do, where they succeed, where they fail, and try to learn from that. So I don't have the same failures. I'll have my own failures, right? But maybe not the same ones,
Yeah.
which is why
Right.
I always ask here for those listeners that are like me, learning from each other is such a great way. If you can really learn from others, that's such a great way. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. So let's dive into marketing. So what are some of the trends you're seeing, especially in the entrepreneurial startup, small size business world, from a marketing perspective?
So at Liger, we use a term called BATCOM. So it's BATCOM. And I wish I could figure out how to make it sound like a Liger term, but it's not. It sounds like a Batman thing. And so in BATCOM, the most important letter is C, which is conversion. And so when people start a business, do a thing, everyone wants conversion, which means
Right,
someone's going to typically conversion means I'm going to pay you money for the thing that you're trying to sell. But if you haven't taken care of the other letters, which are traffic, so you're not getting any traffic to your site or to your store or to the thing that you're trying to get people to pay attention to, you'll never get conversion. If people are not aware of who you are and what you do, which is totally educational and give back, it's not buy a thing from me, it's like
right,
giving back into that community. And then if your brand isn't right, you'll never make it to conversion. And so this idea of instantly standing something up and getting conversion while having not taken care of traffic, awareness, and brand is is a problem. And you can't skip a step. It just doesn't happen. And if it does, it's lightning and luck. It really is like some
yeah,
celebrity picked up your thing or whatever, and you can't replicate that. You just
right,
can't even pretend to replicate it. Now, there is optimization and measurement. So once you have conversion, understanding what's converting, why it's converting, is it the right dollars? But getting to that C is the hardest thing in the world. And so you have to start off with consistency in your brand. Who are you? What's your voice? Those types of things to start stepping across those. Now, that doesn't mean go get a logo, right? Like that, yeah, but people focus on that precious little logo for so long. You gotta, how are you going to show up in the world? What are you going to say? Things like, so that there's this repeated pattern of consistency that makes people aware of you, that then drives traffic to you so you can get conversion. So just like going to the gym, I would love to, be able to go run a 10K tomorrow. I could probably barely run a 1K. Like I got to do all the work to get to
yep.
that letter that you care about.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective. And so, for the founders who are still working through that, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about or considering in their process of getting towards that wonderful moment of getting a C?
Well, it is, marketing is as much an art as it is a science.
Yeah,
Specifically at the beginning, as you're kind of building the brand and who are you and how do you show up in the world. So not waiting until it's perfect. So progress, perfection isn't the way of progress. Make some progress, get some stuff out there, try the pitch, build a few things. But once you start to find something that works, you need to build a very strong signature of that. So it's this, as entrepreneurs, we like new things. And so it's time to change the logo, or let's do the website again, or whatever. That can really hurt you because you need that consistency to be in front of people so that they're, even if they're not paying full attention, they're subliminally seeing your brand and your name and those types of things. So experimentation, see what works. And when you think it's working, double down on that baby and leave it in place for a period of time until you can prove otherwise. And so it is a delicate balancing act of like a little bit of experimentation, do it sooner than see if people will eat the dog food. And then once you have something, like lean into it until you determine it's not serving you. And the way it may not be serving you is you're not attracting the ideal client you really want to work with, right? You can't make enough money off of it. We've changed the portfolio at Liger at least 3 times now, where we've like seen all the things and decided that there's, some new ideal client we want to go after, and it required us to change our pipeline and rethink the brand and the voice and the message. But it wasn't until we'd had a period of experience that we knew that it was time to do that.
When I think back when you say, don't change because we as entrepreneurs, we love new things. We love to do a lot of different things, but don't change for the sake of change, right? Change because the business needs you to. And I double down on that. And also you got a lot of other things you got to think about as a founder and building your business. Don't go after something that's you already got something. Like let it test out, let it actually, it's rooted. You've planted the seed, let the roots grow, let it grow and see what you get from it and focus on something else for a nanosecond.
Yeah. And you'll notice like what I see is smaller brands that can't make the mistake of consistency do. So they don't use the same color over and over again. They don't
Mm,
use the same type font, whatever. Big brands that could afford to make a
sure.
mistake never do. Like you can watch a commercial, Target, Williams and Sonoma, Old Navy, several use white. Publix, they use white. And you
Mm-hmm.
can tell the ad before you see the logo just by the color white that they're using. So they're very picky about how that shows up and what that is. And they could afford to make a mistake. You can't. You have a very limited budget. You need things to be consistent and to show up the same way and have the signature that people kind of almost identify it before they know it.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So, what are some of the things that you're working on today? Like, when I think of marketing, like there's just obviously a huge umbrella of different things, but obviously in today's world with technology and social media, like as a founder myself, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to go. Like there's so many different social medias out there and they're all unique to different types of audience and so forth. What would be some of the maybe some ideas or thoughts that a founder with their marketing person or just themselves thinking about like why they should spend time in one place over another or how they should divvy up their time?
Yeah, so um there are from a social media perspective, we were always suggesting at least two channels because there was a thing called MySpace, right? And you
Not to
may
age
not
us
be
or those that
right.
know what that is.
Right. Or you may not be a fan any longer of X because of the way it's moved. So if you, and I had a huge, when Twitter, huge following on Twitter, spent a lot of time on it. Now I'm primarily on LinkedIn, but having like one primary channel and one secondary so that way, and thinking of social media as more than the big, Facebooks, whatever, like there's Medium and YouTube, like those things are also considered a way to get in front of your audience. You don't own that content when you put it up there. So if that platform goes away, everything you've built, everything you've done is gone too. So having some hedging, as to where things are and what they look like, and also including that content into something you own. So we talk about peso, which is a industry term in marketing. It's paid. So something I've paid for. So I pay you to place an article, I pay you for an advertisement. Earned, I've gotten in front of you, you found me interesting, so you wrote about me, which is one of the highest ways to get recognized. Shared is what you and I are doing. So you and I both have our own network. We're doing a podcast together. I'll share it to my network, you share it to yours. And then owned, which are things like our blogs and websites and places that we put content that we have full control over. And regardless of where we share it, it's always going to live there.
Yeah.
So investing kind of across all three of those, knowing earned is the hardest to do, but the most impactful,
Uh-huh.
will get you a really good mix of kind of where you're sharing content, what it looks like, how it feels.
That makes sense. So, what are the things that you're seeing that your customers are struggling with, or that you and your team spend the most time on? That if you could get in front of your customers, maybe a week or a month or a year earlier, they would have had not such a hard time dealing with.
That exactly what you just said. They don't realize how long the sales cycle is. So we
Oh,
primarily work with B2B companies that do complex sales. So we're like in
hmm,
fintech, financial services, things like that. The
yeah,
average B2B sales cycle is 6 months. It's like 182 days.
yeah.
And so if you come to me today and you want to make a sale in a month and we have a 180-day sales cycle, can't I can't cut that down,
Yeah.
right? And they don't get it. Like they think they're exceptional. Like, oh well, but you can do it for. I'm like, no, I really I can't. Right? Like it's 21 times that somebody has to see a brand before they start to establish awareness. Remember my brand awareness
Wow,
piece? I start
21
to drive
times.
21 times.
Woo.
So 180
I feel
days in
like
a
I need to flash both of our brands on our YouTube video right now 21 times.
well, in the 21, and like what we're doing here is a great way of mixing it up. You can't be like, you
Yeah.
need to watch the golf channel and they play the same commercial over and over again.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, like that people just, it just becomes noise. So it has to be
Yes.
something that interrupts me.
Mhm.
The other interesting stat is that the human brain's attention span is 7 seconds, and a goldfish has an 8 second
I
attention
love that
span.
one.
It's
I feel
so,
like it's getting worse too, right? With
oh yeah,
technology.
and I'm ADD in such the bad way, so bad, and so like I'm the worst. Like it's like things happen and ping and whatever, and so that you can't start too soon. And marketing,
Yeah.
for some reason, even though often mentioned as the first department in a company, like, oh, we've got a marketing, a sales, whatever, is often the last department they build. It's the last one they invest in. It's the first one they cut, like all these things. And it is the cash register that's ringing, and you're not going to necessarily feel the impact immediately, but you're going to feel it over time. And we also have companies, this doesn't happen in B2B as much, where they're paying for all of their traffic and they need to be investing also in organic. We see the opposite effect, where B2Bs will invest way too much in organic and they add paid too late, and they add too small a layer of paid. But you need a good mix of the two to really have a healthy approach.
Yeah, and I think what I see, and correct me if you see differently, is that it's because there's not that almost instant gratification. It's I brought you on, I need the sale by a month. You didn't get it for me, I'm gonna cut. I don't like marketing is not an instant gratification hit, right?
I
And a
know,
lot of us in the startup world, we
and I
need that like fix, right?
I know, and I say it every single time we start with a client, and then we get like 3 months down the road, and they're like, they act like they thought they were unique, like, well, it took a month to stand it up, and we're in the middle of seeing if things are going to work,
Yeah.
and transactional businesses can get away with it. You can do buy one get one 50% off, like things
Mm,
like that. But when you're doing a complex sale, and complex, in my opinion, isn't always even B2B. It's relational. It takes time. You have to educate people. There's a risk in making the decision.
mhm.
And that's not something somebody's going to do because you give them a $10 coupon.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not.
It's so true. Yeah. So what are some of the like the fun what is the funnest thing you've ever worked on in regards to like a campaign or a marketing thing that like was just so unique and you just had a fun time doing it?
Because we are in B2B, and so our tagline is saving the world from boring, broken marketing.
I love it.
And so we say B2B marketing is either boring or broken or both.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be. Like, they people who buy for businesses are people too. So they want something unique and interesting that they're going to remember. So, we've done all kinds of activations where, we have one that's actually in San Diego this month, where there's a conference and there's a bunch of competitors at the conference, and we work with one of the companies. And so we've rented pedicabs for the night that go from the hotel to the Gaslight District, and they're all wrapped in this company's logo, and they're free. And so the competitors are going to have to ride in the pedicab to dinner.
Almost like a mwaha moment.
Right. So a little gorilla like that,
I love
Uh,
it.
yeah. So, and we work with some fun brands that let us do just, you know, more interesting B2B work than is traditional. We don't want the big inspirational sign with the thing in the background. Like, we have a deck we call the idea detention center. So the idea wasn't a bad idea, it just didn't get used by that client. And so we'll use that to do some shopping with clients when we're trying to pick something. And we really do like those, because marketing needs to be visceral. It either needs to make me hate it, love it, but talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
if you're not talking about it, you failed.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Well, I love it. I feel like we could talk about marketing all day long, but as we wrap up today, is there any last tidbit or thought or words of wisdoms or ideas you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so people always ask me, I give you the top two things that make someone successful in this world of entrepreneurship and just business in general. One is consistency. Just absolutely consistency, getting up at the same time, doing the same thing, showing up when you say you're going to show up, being a consistent person will get you almost 90% of the way there. And the other that's important is awareness. So an understanding of why you're doing and reacting to things the way you are and getting underneath that, because that awareness, when you have an unaware leader, they end up building really unhealthy organizations. So they think they're really good at a thing, they should give it to someone else because someone else would be better at it. They don't know what kind of impact they make on the organization when they walk in the room. You yield more power than you know when you're doing that kind of role, and you've got to be more conscious of it.
I feel like there's a whole podcast just about that last little piece about being aware. But yes, great advice. Eric, it was such a pleasure to have you on the call today. And for those listening or watching, I hope you got a couple of tidbits out like I did. And we will see you on the next podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.